thing about this car is it's front wheel drive, and so wheel spin is a huge part of accelerating with this car. You're going to get a bunch of that wheel spin. It's going to take a few seconds to kind of catch and start moving unless you just slightly push the throttle input. It's just a weird car. Every time I drive it, like sometimes we have those sort of like drug delivery random events that spawn where you take out the thugs and then you just steal this exact car, except it's like purple because it's supposed to be the Ballas gang, and you take that car and you deliver it to like some barn up north near Sandy Shores or just south of Sandy Shores. So this is one of the free vehicles you can get. It's really not that much, but for $0, I mean, you might as well claim it and check out the customization for yourself. And then the other car that's available for $0 is the classy Drift Walton L35. There's so many variants of the Walton L35 now. We have the Drift Walton L35, which is basically the same as the normal Walton L35 stock. And then you have the OG Walton L35, which is just, you know, lifted pickup truck version, single cab. This is the best one and my favorite, in my opinion. Then we probably have this one or the Drift Walton, which I'll be honest, I haven't driven it that much, but it is one of the free cars you could pick up. I would assume, honestly, when it comes down to it, because funny enough, the other sort of brother to it, the Drift Yosemite, is on discount this week. This is a pretty sweet drift vehicle right here. I would prefer driving that. I remember driving this once and I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but it is available for $0 this week. And it's a $1.4 million car, which will save you a significant amount of money. So those are the two free cars, which, you know, normally in my free vehicles guide, we talk about the podium vehicle and the prize ride, which are coming up next. But I just wanted to showcase these two because you can just log on to in-game websites, claim them right now. Since there's zero cost to you as a player, check out the customization yourself, drive around, see what you think. These other ones, you do have to put a little bit of in-game effort into or just have luck on your side to get, but you still don't have to pay any money, so that's why we're going to review the performance on the track. So let's move on to those. For your LS Car Meet prize ride for the week, it's the Fathom FR36. And in order to unlock this vehicle, all you need to do is place top 3 in LS Car Meet Series races for 4 days in a row. So we had a streak of you just being able to unlock a car for basically just completing one LS Car Meet Series race, whether you were winning, placing top 2, 3, 4, or 5, and you would get the car. This time you do need to go back to doing it for 4 days in a row in order to get this one. This is a very weird infinity in this game because honestly, I like it. Like with the drift tuning upgrades, it is absolutely a drift vehicle. Normally on the road, it just feels like a little underpowered in my opinion. Not necessarily because of engine resistance or anything like that, but it just feels like this car is operating at maybe 85 to 90% of what it should and actually be able to do. But it is based on that 3rd gen Infiniti G35, so you probably want to grab it if you don't have it already because it is a pretty sweet looking car. Let's see how this car does on the track though. So we'll get started. 3, 2, 1, go. Off the line, decent amount of wheel spin, but once you get going, you really get going. You can feel this car pick up. And sort of like I was saying earlier, I'm just curious on seeing how it's going to do on this track because this car doesn't feel slow. It's not a slow car. It just doesn't feel like... I guess what I'm trying to say is it just feels like it's going a little bit slower than it should, like I was saying earlier. It doesn't feel like the car has engine resistance, which is a trait that some cars have in this game. It's an advanced handling flag. It doesn't have that. So it doesn't feel like you're, you know, shifting too late or shifting too early or anything like that. Or the car wants to sit in the wrong gear for longer than it should. It's kind of hard to explain because it doesn't feel underpowered directly. You kind of just notice it as you continue to drive and you're like, maybe it should have accelerated a little bit harder like that. Or maybe I feel like I should just be going faster over this hill despite the top speed, you know, still being in play and I should still be trying to win shit. But something like that. Like going downhill, the car does feel good, but it's like we're going downhill right now. This is kind of how the car should ride, but that doesn't happen. And when you take a turn, sometimes you can upset the weight balance. It kind of steps out on you like I did for But this is not a bad car by any means. It's a great looking Infiniti in this game. I really like it. I don't really get the chance to drive it too much. When this car released with the Chop Shop update, I was a big fan. This was one of the release day cars that I really enjoyed driving. And this is that same one. I just have it in black. Like the full thing is blacked out. It's like my own little Civic, right? Fully blacked out. Limo tint on the windows. Black primary and secondary. Black wheels. I went with big 5-spoke rims this time. I don't know, maybe I should have went with something else because I changed it to like a more aggressive front and rear bumper, and then what I did was I actually just switched back to stock. I honestly really prefer the way this car looks in more of the stock configuration. I went with slightly different fenders and extended skirts, but the front bumpers are too square and boxy, and same with the rears. The rears I really don't like because half of them, they're just duplicates, but they add a diffuser, and they call it different bumper. The diffuser isn't a nice little diffuser, like little fins at the bottom of the rear bumper. The diffuser that they'll use with this FR36 is this massive contraption that's bolted on, extended out and under the rear bumper, and it just looks tacky. It doesn't look good. I mean, if you had a drift build, maybe, but this isn't a drift build. This is just normal street build we're operating here. Let's see the time we can set. I already reviewed the next vehicle we're going to be talking about. We are going to get a faster time than that. You'll see that shortly. But this is 2 minutes 46, almost 2 minutes 47 seconds. So I guess not really below average for a sports car, just not on the top end for like a supercar. Not bad performance, honestly. Next up, we have the Diamond Casino podium vehicle, the Benefactor Sterling GT. This car is fantastic. You get excellent acceleration and a really strong top speed, considering this is a vehicle in the sports classics category. You know, it's not a modern supercar or sports car, but you still get super modern feeling handling. You get really good grip and honestly minimal oversteer under normal driving conditions. If you push it to its limits, maybe you'll find it gets upset. But besides that, it's super stable, super predictable in the corners. If you crash, it's got good crash durability as well. It's pretty forgiving if you're a driver in this game. And like I said, it's one of the most competitive sports classics cars. So with that, you get classic styling. You get as close to modern performance in a vehicle considering the vehicle's age. And it has HSW upgrades you can apply to make it even faster. So this thing rocks. Let's check it out and test its performance on the street. Alright, well, let's get started reviewing the Benefactor Sterling GT performance on the track. I'll start my stopwatch in 3, 2, 1, go. Immediate jam on the gas. This thing hooks up right away and launches well. I think my favorite thing about the Benefactor Sterling GT is the exhaust note, the engine sound, the burbles you get when this thing downshifts if you're just coasting and you let off the throttle. This thing is just so sick. It's not going to be the fastest sports classic in the game, although with HSW that definitely changes the picture. This is just the non-HSW Benefactor Sterling GT that we're talking about here. But when it comes to HSW, this thing is like a complete bullet. It's ridiculously fast, and so that's a huge plus. But just when it comes to
you need something, huh? One of your rides?
This car,
let me know.
I absolutely love it. There's really no issue that I'm having when it comes to traction or handling. The sound makes it super thrilling and enjoyable
coming at
to drive. I mean, that's what we want to see in every sort of car in GTA. And I styled this one after like the standard Mercedes 300 with that same sort of, you know, just the clean metal finish, right? Clean silver look. This car has a little bit of chrome on it. Well, let's see if we can thread the needle with these cars. Perfect. On the downhill, you can see this thing is super fast, even with non-HSW. Like, this is not a slow car by any means. It's just not one of the fastest if you don't have the HSW upgrades on it. And nowadays, there's a bunch of HSW cars that can kick butt compared to this, but this is still a very fast one. I forget what the HSW top speed is, but just off the top of my head, I gotta look it up. This is normally a challenging corner for any vehicle I talk about, and this one handled it excellently. For as old of a car that this thing is, it's performing just fine. I mean, what's not to love about this one? You do need to spin the Diamond Casino Lucky Wheel and just have a chance of unlocking. You're not necessarily guaranteed it, unlike those other two cars that you could just get off the websites, or even the Car Me Prize ride where you complete a challenge and you get the car. I mean, all of these still you spend $0 in-game dollars on, but this one is, I guess, technically the hardest to obtain from the week, right? And that's also kind of why I wanted to talk about it last in today's video. Funny enough, while I'm recording this is the first one that I'm reviewing. I'm doing this Wednesday evening now that I know we're getting to the next weekly update. I have to wait until tomorrow morning on Thursday to get the update. I'm going to show the customization of them, if there's any neat customization or if it's just the car itself. Maybe we'll get something special. Either way, when it comes to this one, this Benefactor is very easy to keep box. I mean, I guess it could, I'd like if it accelerates a little bit faster. It's really a non-issue. Oh, okay, first little traction loss right there. We got around those corners just fine. You'll see as we get to the end of the track here, though, our pace is going to be a little bit faster. we're about to set 2 minutes and 5 seconds, call it, around that track. Which I feel like, you know, there are cars that are faster, and again, if you're driving this and it's HSW, you're setting a much faster lap time. But listen to the sound. Like, let me go down this hill over here. Listen to this car downshift. And listen to I mean, that just sounds so good. How can you not love that with this car? This is definitely like a top 10 best sounding vehicle in the game. Even if it's not going to be top 10 for this benefactor sterling absolutely awesome. With all that out of the way, though, we are going to be wrapping up here, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did go on to enjoy it, like, rating, of course, appreciate it. Subscribing to the channel if you are new and you want to see more GTAO online content. I review the free DLC vehicles every single week. Typically, it's just the prize ride as well as the podium vehicle. But we have so many free cars. We have those. We have 2 more free ones you can claim off websites like we talked about today. And then we have a claimable salvage yard vehicle, which I'm going to have a dedicated video on and a guide on how to unlock it a little bit later this week. So thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. See you guys in the next video. Adios, amigos.
Candace Owens dropped this trailer.
What does the future hold for humanity? The question weighs heavy on many of our minds. In a moment of political turmoil, cultural nihilism, and increasingly isolating work, many of us are grasping for explanations.
I'll bring it to you.
Something, anything, to make sense of our world. To convince us that everything is going to be okay. For most of human history, this vacuum has been filled with religious stories. Stories of eternal salvation or damnation. Stories about annihilation of the ego and nirvana and samsara. Stories that taught us what was right, what was wrong. Stories that tapped into the great cosmic mystery of life. But as the Enlightenment era brought a greater understanding of science into focus on reason and facts, religious stories became harder to justify. This led Nietzsche to famously proclaim, "God is dead, God remains dead, and we who killed him." Nietzsche was not celebrating or secularization, but rather mourning for the crisis of meaning and purpose that resulted from a declining belief in grand cosmic stories and beliefs. Quote, "What festivals have become? What sacred games shall we have? Must we ourselves now become gods simply to appear worthy?" Digital technology, in a way, has always been a quasi-religious story. Founders like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates were looked upon as messiahs for the information revolution. The internet and smartphones were worshipped as visual inventions that would connect humanity and allow us to communicate across difference. This era of Silicon Valley convinced us that the future was not something to fear, but something wondrous and imaginative. Something the wackiest sci-fi stories of the 20th century never would. But the next generation of founders and the technologies they ushered in have not lived up to the hype. Social media and wearable technology have become the tools of surveillance. The metaverse was a spectacular without further ado, strap in, grab a beverage. Got my coffee here, which has already gone cold because it's freezing outside. Don't know why I'm up. And join me on this wild ride with dreams and nightmares of the worst people you know. I'm a firm believer in the doctrine of knowing one's enemy. I'm also a firm believer that there's no such thing as unbiased media or news, and I never try to hide my own biases behind false media. Unfortunately, mainstream media often obfuscates its own stakeholders and the biases they bring behind this false media, which makes it difficult to find reliable information. Today's sponsor of Ground News is an app and website that allows me to cut through all this noise and gain a clear understanding of news that happens. It aggregates news from all over the world in one place and breaks down a story by how it's covered based on the outlet. Multiple readings, responding to narrative, where in the world it's perspective. Take this story about over 200 outlets cover this story, so if I scroll down and compare how it's being covered, I can see that the right-leaning sources taking almost and the potential for economic gains. But they also call out a criticism missing from the level that Biden himself increasingly is head. No, I'm not taking very long to it is right that while different in style, the decades of interventionist foreign policy I also like the seen real stories about the U.S. Government-run, for instance, highlights the flippant attitude of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in wanting to protect their relationship with the United States, while India today fears this will spill out. As an anti-imperialist, Ground News has been an essential tool in helping.
What you need, boss? Some wheels? I can bring them
who
around.
I can rely on for trustworthy information. I've partnered with them to offer 40% off
It's on the way.
package plan that I use to my viewers. So check out Ground News today by using my QR code or going to ground.news/SWT. But that central idea of transcending humanity, whether through genetic engineering or advanced technologies, would remain at its core. One of the more interesting depictions of transhumanism is Ian M. Biggs' sci-fi series. In these novels, Biggs depicts of 7 or 8 humanoid species living.
Hello, this is 911. What emergency service do you require?
These humanoid aliens.
Thank you. Police officers are en route to your current location.
Control much of the culture's operations, meaning that the purpose of life becomes, quote, less physical, more metaphysical, and the aims of civilization moral rather than material. Scarcity is unknown, as is exploitation. Quote, it is essentially an automated civilization in its manufacturing processes, with human labor restricted to something indistinguishable from play or combat. The people of
Go ahead,
Oregon
hang
must be
out.
described
I
as
could
some
use a
odd
break.
mix of technologically
You gotta be
advanced
shitting me.
modified humans mixed with more classical humans. The enhanced humans leverage things that bring computer interfaces, nanotechnology, and biomedical communications. Most classical humans carry inherited genetics. Because genetics are hereditary, almost everyone in the culture is born with optimized immune systems, enhanced senses, freedom from inheritance, defects, and the ability to control autonomic At first glance, this might sound exactly like the future of the likes of Elon Musk and Sam Altman want to create. Musk's produces brain restore autonomy to electrons and unlock new dimensions of human potential. SpaceX is about, quote, believing in the future and that the future will be Sam Altman's artificial intelligence the philosophies they represent apply the same sort of revolutionary optimism as Banks' novel. Sport as a form of play is echoed by researchers about recursive genders and sex organs, something that Banks says naturally leads to greater sexual equality. If one gender is oppressive towards another, he says, there will be a natural self-correction towards equality. These egalitarian principles are nowhere to be found in the libertarian transhumanism that has taken root in Silicon Valley. But I think it's a mischaracterization to imply that libertarians perverted an otherwise pure vision of an inherently egalitarian future, what many leftists separate. Remember Julian Huxley, who popularized the word transhumanism in 1957? Well, he was also a hardcore eugenicist, serving as president of the British Eugenics Society. Eugenics has seen a number of phases and variants, but primarily refers to a set of practices and beliefs aimed at improving the genetic. I find it striking and unfortunately all too relevant for our discussion. The first person to coin the term transhumanism also preached eugenics in order to reach the transcendence. The deliberate practice of eugenics, Carson says, would not be natural selection, but artificial selection, involving the conscious aim and the deliberate control of the individual. It would therefore operate much more rapidly and much less wastefully than natural selection. For most of the 20th century, eugenics was about improving the race through coercive, usually racist sexist and ableist practices. The Nazis, of course, forcibly sterilized and mass murdered those deemed to have undesirable genes, such as the poor, mentally ill, disabled, homosexual, transsexual. Even before then, California forcibly sterilized at least 20,000 patients in asylums and hospitals between 1970 and 1970. These were methods of negative eugenics, but there were also positive eugenics, which encouraged those more desirable genes to reproduce. Eugenicists have the idea that evolution is a process of improvement rather than simply changing the environment, modification, specialization, and diversification. Eugenics aims to create more evolved humans through artificial selection. It aims to speed up the improvement process of the genetic code. It determines what constitutes a more evolved human. What traits are humans though? Historically, eugenicists have defined the ideal human by things like racial purity, cleanliness, and physical fitness. But transhumanism takes this a step. Transhumanists just want to improve the human race, to send it all together and create something radically superior. In fact, this is why my guest in this video, philosopher and reformed transhumanist Emil P. Torres, describes transhumanism as eugenics on steroids. As transhumanism evolved into the ideology we see today, it began to incorporate into its vision of radical human enhancement suggested by people like Peter Thiel, Nick Bostrom, and Eliezer Yudkowsky. And just another disclaimer, not every transhumanist sees things the exact same way. Thiel, for instance, wants to maintain a biological body, while Bostrom and Yudkowsky would rather be a mind template and exist as a heavy being of light and belong to having fun with other existence. Others still reject these ideas altogether, but by and large, these are what have become most popular. You've probably seen this viral clip of Peter Thiel's interview with Robert.
So you would prefer the human race to shit, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
Yes?
I don't know. I would. How's it going? I would.
This is a long
There's
hesitation.
so many questions involved.
Should the human race survive?
Yes.
Objectively a hilarious and deeply disturbing but what most people haven't seen, and I think is more interesting, is what comes next.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so it's always I don't know transhumanism is this the ideal is this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an animal body. And there's a critique with the trans people
Who the
transvestite is someone who
What's going on?
their clothes and cross dresses, and a transsexual is someone where you change your penis into a vagina. And we renovate a lot of those surgeries. But we want more transformation than that. The critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's
because I got this outfit on, or what?
cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want
I ain't withdrawn from this conflict.
as much.
Is it this outfit? It has to be that outfit.
Know if the human race should exist, into talking about transcendence altogether through violence. This is what many of
I have to
the
test this.
transhumanists see as the end goal of the replacement.
I have to test this.
Discussed the idea of the post-human in a 2008 essay titled Why I Want to Be Post-Human, in which he argues that it can be very worthwhile and very good to become post-human. These radically enhanced humans would be able to explore vastly more expansive modes of being, like 200-dimensional hyperspace, perfect understanding of every book in the Library of Congress, immortality, perfect self-control
No, I'm out
over
now.
mood and energy, perception of radio waves, telepathy, force, mind uploading. As humans, we would
Ask
be
me if I
able
give a
to
shit, why don't you?
and transmit ourselves as information.
You're fucked! I'm from Liberty City!
Screw you,
told you not to go there!
Okay, whatever.
Physical
No big deal.
To many of us, an immortal life lived in a digital simulation sounds like the very definition of torture. But for many testrialists, this is the utopian vision they are working
It's
towards.
probably not the outfit.
Sacrifice
Conservative asshole!
humanity.
Borisville!
Take it from Eliezer Yudkowsky, transhumanist and co-founder of the Rationalist movement, aka the Hawking Test Group, who said this on fellow transhumanist Dan Pichel's podcast.
If sacrificing all of humanity was the only way and a reliable way to get, beings, like godlike beings out there, super intelligences who still care about each other and who are still aware of the world and who are still having fun, I would ultimately make that trade-off.
This might seem like an utterly batshit that humanity is worth sacrificing to bring about a world of beings of light.
You got shitty karma!
And having fun. And that's because
Help!
it's also where we begin to see the poisoning influence of utilitarian thinking. Utilitarianism maximizing well-being, utility, and minimizing is supposedly impartial. Is to quantify and determine into rational conclusion. In Yudkowsky's eyes, sacrificing humanity for post-humans is obviously the right thing to do, because there are incalculable post-humans that exist in existence, so the metaphysical value of their collective well-being. Cited by philosopher Max Moore, this is where extropianism comes from, the test question. Pete Hagee describes it as, quote, a form of pro-science super-optimism that seeks to fight entropy, the universal law that says all things fall apart, everything tends towards chaos and death on all fronts. One of the most lasting features of extropianism is the pursuit of immortality through technological means. Extropians lambasted the deathism and biological fundamentalism rampant through mainstream discourse on technology, and believed that conquering death was not only achievable, but desirable. Extropians believed that immortality could be achieved through future advances in biomedical technology, which would effectively bring back to life people whose bodies, brains, or even penises had been preserved through cryonic freezing. I can't believe I forgot to say what that reference was. Jeffrey Epstein, you know the one. He was a transhumanist, and he wanted to seed the human race with his DNA. And he also signed up to have his body and penis frozen upon his death. I don't know if that ever happened. But anyways, do with that information what you will. Although the movement no longer exists formally, it provided space for radical ideas to flourish. Ideas that, according to their now defunct but undeniably bad website, quote, will satisfy, startle, and stimulate. Ideas that continue to flourish under the likes of Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, Brian Johnson, and some others. The extropian movement attracted a wide range of social talent types, including the aforementioned Robert Hansen, Turing Award-winning computer scientist Marvin Minsky, great
Alright, kids. You're making a pass at the Lost out near my place by the Alamo Sea. I've left some silenced weapons in my garage for you, so head here first.
One of the preeminent voices to the movement was at that time a plucky teen who made waves with his bold prediction
The plan is to go in when most of them are sleeping. You take out the guards and take the vans. Then they wake up in the morning and all their buddies are dead and they're short their stash. Oh man, it'll be hilarious.
As the name suggests, Minkowski's work at the Singularity Institute was concerned with the technological singular, which loosely refers to the theoretical moment when technological progress reaches a pinnacle and becomes unstoppable and irreversible. Emile described this interpretation of the singularity to be as such.
Okay, well you might not believe this, or you might, because I'm just so plain adjusted. But I went to a therapist one time, and that lady played the same game as you do. The appointment would start. I'd come in, take a seat on the couch, and she'd sit there. Total silence, like a rock, with glasses and a scribbly little pen. But I was too smart then, and I am too smart now. I'm not falling for it. No, ma'am. What right do you got to sit there and ask me about my mom? With your eyes, or your ears. You're the perverts with those thoughts. A man can love his mother without loving his mother. One day she'll need me, and when she does, all right. End of story, you sick freak. Breathe. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you get kicked out of the Air Force. Now hurry up. Where the hell are you? I got bored of waiting. Pick up the guns and get in the boat I got moored out back.
To the air. And so the AGI then starts to take over the role of and once the entire world is AGI plus, then that AGI plus is in the position. So the claim is that
Okay, you're there! Finally! Take the boat west past Sandy Shores to the Lost's camp at Staff City.
which predicts we will have 330,000 superhuman AI researcher copies thinking at 57 times human speed by 2027. And by 2035, assuming the world doesn't end, 1 trillion wildly super intelligent copies thinking at 9,000 times human speed, generating $400 trillion a year out of $8,000 trillion every year. This project went mega hard, gaining traction
How you doing? Huh? When you're close, get out of the boat and creep up on them. Don't let anyone see you. If you're seen, they'll wake up the other guys, and the surprise will be ruined. That'll be guys standing around, kicking the shit, and guys on patrol. If 2 guys are looking at each other, you're gonna have to take them down at the same time. Do not move on the vans till you got all the guards. We need them all gone before you move.
Then I realized that I had been completely mistaken. This third one would become the cosmic goal to develop AI in a way that is friendly to what is now known as AI alignment, a subfield of AI safety that has completely dominated the debate about risks and damages caused by AI. To solve the AI alignment problem, Yudkowsky founded a new intellectual framework he dubbed rationalism, which we'll come back to. Yudkowsky would go on to court Peter Thiel's funding for his Singularity Institute, which within a year turned into Thiel funding the Singularity Summit at his alma mater and Silicon Valley powerhouse, Stanford University. Perhaps the most consequential product of this summit was the founding of DeepMind, an AI startup hoping to develop an AI inspired by the human brain, which was seeded by $2.25 million from none other than Peter Thiel. The co-founder of DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, described his 10-year plan for DeepMind as a, quote, Manhattan project for AI, a phrase that Altman would later repurpose for GPT-5 hype.
There are these moments in the history of science where you have a group of scientists look at their creation and just say, you know, what have we done? Maybe it's great, maybe it's bad, but what have we done? Like maybe the most iconic example is thinking about the scientists working on the Manhattan Project in 1945, sitting there watching the Trinity test and just, you know, this thing that had, it was a completely new, not human scale kind of power, and everyone knew it was going to reshape the world. And I do think people working on AI.
The final subgenre of transhumanism in the Teskriel bundle is modern cosmism, which affirms the transhumanist desirability of merging with computers and developing sentient AI, but goes a step further in predicting that, quote, we will spread to the stars and roam the universe, merging with other species, building synthetic realities or virtual worlds, and developing space-time engineering and scientific future magic much beyond our current understanding and imagination.
That's the end game for me. That's the stakes on the table, to make the star cities.
When we understand cosmism as the inherently expansionist, capitalist end goal of transhumanism, we start to see why it is so attractive to libertarian technologists. What capital wants, more than anything, is to replace the human with more efficient, less needy computers. These future post-humans, if even possible, would do just that. The transhumanist utopia is one in which nature is completely withdrawn into a computer simulation, and it doesn't matter that the natural beauty of the world has been destroyed. We will be able to recreate perfect simulations of
get the vans and get going. Ron will be waiting in a warehouse under the LS freeway.
And they will be even better, because they will be designed to be exactly how we want them. The replacement of humans might sound like an exaggeration, and sure, not all transhumanism is. I think it's been Yudkowsky, as we saw, is totally fine with sacrificing humanity for the sake of
Oh shit. I cannot kick or
This is the movement's
This is gay.
Even if we assume that all their wildest dreams are possible, the people in charge of developing these technologies, mostly rich, white, real Westerners, are the ones in the position to make these cosmically unprecedented decisions. We already see how current AI systems are used to disempower, oppress, discriminate, and exploit marginalized communities on the planet. Why would we expect this hypothetical post-human species to be any different? For all their talk about aligning AI to human values, these people take for granted that they are the ones democratically determining and imposing these values. Indeed, us humans haven't even decided that these technologies should be pursued at all. But this movement, with its messianic worship of technology, never questions the pursuit of such technologies. And if they do, it's only for exaggerated warnings. They never question the fact that such technology will produce corporations if, for instance, Elon Musk's succeeds at radically enhancing cognition through brain implants, we would have the resources to install such a device. These concerns are validated by people like Nick Beckstead, a long-termist who thinks we should prioritize improving the lives of people in rich countries over people in poor countries. Why, you might be asking? Because, quote, rich countries have substantially more innovation and their workers are much more economically productive. But even this view is tame compared to the white supremacist, misogynistic, and racist beliefs driving many middle-class groups. Nick Bostrom once admitted to sending an email using the N-word and saying, quote, blacks are more stupid than whites. Robin Hanson, co-founder of the Overcome Bias, argues that incels suffer from sex.
I mean, the sentence
the
itself.
same way poor people suffer from income inequality. And they
Blacks are more stupider.
Right?
Yeah.
Those guys don't think we had anything to do with this. I mean, we're neighbors, right?
In a separate post
See, I mean, I don't shit on my doorstep unless Trevor tells me to, but that was only once. What I'm trying to say is that I only rarely shit on doorsteps, and when I do, I don't want the doorstep owners finding out.
In which he argues for non-coercive liberal eugenics.
Okay, it's too late to save my marriage, but, you know, I got it.
And I don't think I have to remind you about Elon Musk in Peter Thiel. I could go on, there's literally a dizzying number of examples, but I think you can. My point is, this is an incredibly cynical group of people, and even if their sci-fi fantasies come true, in fact, especially if their sci-fi fantasies come true, the question remains, why are we allowing them to dictate our future? Why should a tiny group of non-representative Oxford philosophers and Silicon Valley technologists hold so much power over reshaping our world's future? In Dostoevsky's novel Crime and Punishment, the main character, Raskolnikov, employs a philosophy I once described as egoistic utilitarianism, when he contemplates the prospect of murdering an old moneylender and stealing her money to jumpstart his career. His supposedly rational idea is that such an act would be perfectly justified, because it would propel him to a position of wealth and power, where he could ultimately benefit humanity. Raskolnikov sums up his theory as such, quote, I merely suggested that an extraordinary man has the right, that is, not an official, but his own right, to allow his consciousness to step over such consequences. In the event that the fulfillment of his idea, sometimes perhaps salutary for the whole of mankind, calls for it. Raskolnikov spends chapters upon chapters creating the justification for his crimes, pontificating on thought experiments that wouldn't be out of place in the rationalism classroom. For instance, he says if Isaac Newton's accomplishments are going to be achieved by sacrificing the lives of 1 or 10 or 100 or more people who are standing as an obstacle in his path, he should do so, because his scientific discoveries will help countless people. Raskolnikov eventually does talk himself into committing the crime, and the result is not so much the benefit of humanity. Instead, he spends the rest of the novel in psychological delirium.
He died a little bit too quick.
Not only killing the old crone,
Supermobile. Why would you throw a sticky on your car?
It is not to be confused with the Platonic or Cartesian philosophy of rationalism. It's much, much more stupid than that. In order to unpack the internet AI cult that is rationalism, we first must turn our attention to the movement's not-so-charismatic leader, the worst tech bro you've never heard of, if you're lucky. The AI doomer to end all doomers, Eliezer Yudkowsky. As a refresher, this is the same guy I talked about in part 1, who is fine with sacrificing humanity to bring...
You calling for some wheels? I'm Johnny on the spot. I'll hook you up.
And are having fun. The same guy who has been predicting the end of the world since the 90s.
It's coming at you.
His profile only seems to grow with each incorrect prediction and terrible idea. And importantly for our purposes, the guy who developed the intellectual framework that is rationalism in order to solve the AI alignment problem. Supposedly, rationalism is about using reason and logic to come to answers. But as we're about to see, it's much more about pseudo-intellectual reductionism, utilitarianism, and the worship of advanced technologies. One key rationalist, founder of the Slate Star Codex blog, Scott Alexander, joked that the movement's main characteristic is the belief that, quote, Eliezer Yudkowsky is the rightful caliph. Like Raskolnikov, Yudkowsky has a massive ego and is absolutely obsessed with thought experiments, some of which go too seriously on a criminal basis. One such post, called Torture versus Justice, presents the idea that it would be obviously better for one person to really torture for 50 years versus some unfathomable large number of people getting a speck of dust barely enough. Yudkowsky points out that the overall suffering of the speck of dust is much larger than the years, simply because there are so many. To a rationalist, there is no bridge too far. Nothing sufficient. Everything about the philosophy boils down to numbers, data, and it's not about thoroughly thinking things through and coming to an informed decision. It's not about forgetting all you know and using reason to arrive at truth. Part of rationalism's marketing is that hearing the word makes it seem perfectly reasonable, rational. That is, of course, until you understand that rationalism is not a philosophy, but a dogma based on extreme thinking, exaggerated assumptions, statistical probabilities, pointless thought experiments, obsession with utility, and a quasi-religious worship of technology. There's no better proof of concept for this claim than rationalists' view on AI and existential risk. This is really the central defining feature and the most lasting impact of Yudkowsky's philosophy. The belief that artificial superintelligence, or ASI, is inevitable and will destroy humanity.
Jesus!
He wrote in a 2023 Time that, quote, the most likely result of building superhumanly smart AI is that literally everyone on Earth will die. Not as in maybe some remote possible chance, but as in that is the most obvious thing. He would later double down and expand on this idea in his 2025 book, Nate Soares. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. The it meaning artificial superintelligence. They say of the title, quote, we do not mean that as hyperbole. We are not exaggerating for effect. We think that this is the most direct extrapolation from the knowledge, evidence, and institutional context around artificial intelligence. Yudkowsky says that the only way to stop this is for AI safety research to catch up to AI development. AI safety, by the way, as scenario refers primarily to developing It's important to differentiate this from AI ethics, which focuses on the present-day harms of AI technology, science, environmental damage, Yudkowsky dismisses these as a distraction from what really matters, mitigating the existential risks. Despite his stark warnings that the end is nigh, Yudkowsky's goals do not differ much from other test realists. He still longs for a glorious transhumanist future. He just thinks that under the current trajectory, the more likely scenario...
What do you need exactly?
So we should slow down AI.
Okay, so you're in serious trouble, and you need my help. Okay.
Many within these communities don't subscribe to Yudkowsky's mindset that ASI will destroy humanity. They think paradox. This creates a very simple debate that centers around the utopia-apocalypse dichotomy
Come in,
Two
good
extremes
prices.
that effectively ignore the present-day harms of AI development. Emil has a great piece on his blog about all the times that Yudkowsky
very
is
good.
constantly wrong. I'd recommend reading it in full if you want a good laugh. My favorite example is him lambasting Turing Award-winning computer scientist Jan LeCun for not having read his 1.8 million word BDSM decision theory. I can't even get through the sentence. For not having read his 1.8 million word BDSM decision theory Dungeons and Dragons fanfiction. It's a real thing. Emil points out that despite Yudkowsky complaining of LeCun's unfamiliarity with the prior literature, this referring is enough to a 1.8 million word BDSM D&D fanfiction. Yudkowsky himself has not read much of the literature he wants to. No shade to fanfic, by the way. I just think it's hilarious to expect much less aggressive computer scientists to have read in their mission to build AGI. Yudkowsky's ideas would influence the writings of Nick Bostrom, lending them academic credibility and institutional acceptance. Gebru and Torres put it best in their original Tescrial paper when they said, Tescrialist ideologies drive the AGI race, even though not everyone associated with the goal of building AGI subscribes to these worldviews. The race towards AGI is built upon rationalism. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov's rationality is based around false assumptions that he is an extraordinary man, that he will be able to turn a modest wealth into lasting power, and that he would even want to help people once he achieves power rather than pursuing his own selfish interests. AGI rationalists make similarly baseless yet crucial assumptions, that superintelligence is not only possible but inevitable, that it will be revolutionary either by bringing utopia that absurd levels of investment into LLMs that could get us out of the mess of being human. Ellen Huet writes in Bloomberg that, quote, the underlying ideology valorizes extremes, seeking rational truth above all else, donating the most money and doing the utmost good for the most important reason. This way of thinking can lend an attractive clarity, but it can also provide cover for destructive or despicable behavior. 8 women in these spaces allege pervasive sexual misconduct, including abuse and harassment that they say has been frequently downplayed.
I got that out of the way for the day. Just needed one of those.
That's because it is. Rationalists are often encouraged to live with others in the community, date others in the community and not outside of it, and participate in doom circles, in which people go around a circle telling someone all the ways they might fail at a given task. It's no accident that rationalism birthed a full-fledged murder cult called the Zizians, who allegedly violently killed 6 people. Less Wrong and other rationalist blogs like Overcoming Bias and Slate Star Codex would become fertile ground for all kinds of extreme ideas to flourish, from Curtis Yarvin's neo-reactionary movement to eugenics to effective altruism to transhumanism, all couched under the language of reason over bias and just asking questions, or rather, just proposing thought experiments. Rationalism, in fact, is
No.
Do you feel like people are talking about God and spiritual matters more than they did 10 years ago? I mean, clearly they are. Where's that going?
I saw you with a guest a few weeks ago talk about, this is well known. I talked to everybody that's done it. I haven't done it. Almost everyone that takes DMT, either from the toad or the ayahuasca plant, these creatures show up that look like court gestures or space aliens, do different things, and say, there are too many humans, you need to wipe out the population, then you'll become gods. It's the same message. And they've had groups of people, they've done studies.
You need to wipe out, you need to kill people so you can become God?
Yes, you need to depopulate, you need to transcend.
Do you know people who've heard that message?
Oh, absolutely. They've had whole groups of studies that have had group hallucinations.
I don't know, I'm not the most spiritually sensitive person, I'm hardly a theologian, but if some demon is telling you to kill people so you can become God, like, we can say that's bad, right?
Absolutely, and the people that then, you're talking about tech heads, who microdose, are big in hallucinations and big into hallucinogenics. When they get more advanced and deep into it, and then most of them have talked about this, then the things start giving them more ideas and explaining the system they're going to build, the AI, the takeover, and this new species, and how, again, you're going to transcend death. And so we've all got to have a larger question there. So they say the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world he didn't exist. I think that's the second biggest trick. I think convincing the world that good doesn't exist is the devil's biggest trick.
Yes. Can you flash? I think that, I'm not exactly sure what you're saying, but I know that you're telling the truth right now. Can you?
Well, convincing us that there isn't anybody good and that you don't have power and that it's all over and we are the Borg, you will be assimilated. The biggest trick is hopelessness when we're promoting truth and justice and honor, and we can't just dial into demons and fallen angels. We can also dial into God and get that message. But you first have to recognize that good and evil exist.
Yes.
And once you recognize that we are ethereal beings, that we are just manifesting ourselves in the third dimension, that all these people that are even atheists have these near-death experiences and come back with the same message. I mean, I personally in my life, have had so many times where I'm literally told something that comes true and just comes from God. And so I know this is real. We are a lot more complex than just what our eyes and ears, taste and touch pick up. And when you really actually study the globalists, none of them are atheists. They're into the occult.
Exactly.
And they believe they're interfacing, even at Skull and Bones. At Yale, they get in these coffins for days. They try to get these spirits to come into them. They try to channel these spirits. You've got the heads of Skull and Bones there in the last few days, seeing who's able to interface with this. These are real rituals that are part of activating parts of the mind so that people can see past the veil. And again, they've now been able, with robots and computers and wires in the brain, Elon talked about decades ago, this is already done. Your eyes narrow the light spectrum, which is so much going on that if you saw the infrared and everything else would be too confusing. But now with hallucinogens and other things, they have been able to prove that people can actually see past the veil into basically other dimensions. And so that's really what this is. And we have to admit to ourselves that what we see and taste and touch and everything is a very small piece of actually what's going on. And that's that wider world. And people have to, once they understand that there is this wider battle going on, then you realize, oh my God, God's real. I better choose God or I better choose the devil. But if people are kind of embedded into this and just grow up in it, and just with the corporate media and life, they get trained into the evil side, never knowing they really had a choice. But almost everybody, if they're given a choice early enough, will choose God that right way. The problem is the system on earth knows that, so the priest class in Christianity or Islam or Judaism, any of it, most of it's bad priests, bad churches who know the power's there, know people are looking for God, know they're seeking, so they're there basically to get the power from you instead of you basically transcending spiritually. And so that's why Christ talked about the relationship with God is personal.
Yes.
And the kingdom of God is within us. The New Agers go, oh, you are God. No, kingdom of God is within us. We're made in God's image. We have the potential to know God, to interface with God. That's worship God. And then through that, begin to transcend to a higher consciousness, interfacing with God, not God, but with God, and then part of God.
So the gift is to see good. Like in that, I do think that's the trick. Because, I mean, no one needs a tutorial on evil. It's all around us. It's super obvious. It no longer disguises itself. Abortion for the sake of abortion? Like, what is that? Well, it's human sacrifice. It's just Canaanite. And
the DNC doing abortions inside the
completely for the sake of abortion, not to improve the life of the girl or she's a 14-year-old rape victim. It's just like, no, abortion is inherently good because it's killing a person. That is all out in the open now. Nobody is confused about its existence. What you don't get a lot of is the recognition that good is a more than equal. It's a larger and opposing force. God is bigger than Satan, and you don't get that sense. Like nobody talks about that. You don't see it. How do you find that?
So many people purposely get turned off of the system by going to a church, whether it's Catholic, Protestant, any of it. And I'm a very empathic person. So growing up, I would feel at churches and you get invited here or there, really creeped out, not by the parishioners, but by the people in the system that are trained. Because
if that is for sure. Gosh,
where I feel the strongest demonic energy is in a lot of these big churches and a lot of these big things, because that's where the devil's sending his forces, and it's energetic. And so, but Christ criticized the Pharisees, Sadducees constantly. He said, you go pray up on the hill in front of everybody, you talk about how perfect you are all day, but really you're of your father the devil in the synagogue of Satan. Or you call it a black Sabbath or whatever. And it happens in Christian churches, it happens in Judaism, it happens everywhere. And if you look at later Judaism, it's not just the Old Testament, the Torah, there's over 30 other books that they say, the rabbinical teachings are just as important. And it runs the gamut from some sects that you can call very pious and close to God to others that are outright Satanism. And you see that in the Christian denominations, all the things that call themselves Christian, that really aren't. Christ said, beware things, that call themselves of God but are not, or the synagogue of Satan. Well, there weren't Christian churches then, the churches were synagogues, but it goes for synagogues, churches, anything. That you got to be really close to God and the Holy Spirit lest you be deceived. And so that's really where it all is. And it comes down to your spiritual inclination. But I just recommend the people personal relationship with God, praying to God, saying, I want to be good. I want to recognize truth. I want to know what truth is. I want to open myself up to you. I'm an imperfect. I repent for what I've done, and I want you to cleanse me and then show me the truth, and then show me how to be a better person, and then show me after that what the mission is you have for me. And literally, if you do that through a process, it may take days, may take months, may take years, then the adventure begins, and then all of a sudden you're being given like intel and stuff, like literally just you have to learn to go with it. It's never wrong, and it's God, and it's there, and it's your personal relationship. And then obviously people get this relationship, they all want to teach other people it, and God says get together in groups. That's great. But Christ didn't try to go get the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the priest class to join him. He said their minds were closed. He went to the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the robbers and the thieves because they were already outcast. But that's where he found people that were already under evil's control but weren't arrogant about it, who were looking for a way out. And so, I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to, is a spiritual relationship with God. And there are some real churches and things.
But don't you find that? I know I have found that. You see sparks of this in the most unlikely people. If you put a list on paper of the people in your life, I won't ask you to say it out loud, but who you really trust, or you talk to and you groove with them and they know exactly what you're saying. They are on the same wavelength in some deep way. It's not the people you would expect.
Here's something you may not have known. Back in 2015, the Congress of the United States repealed something called the Country of Origin Labeling Act. Now, why is this relevant to you? Well, it means, among other things,
Beto GG 404.
Supermarket that says "Made in the USA."
Well, 404 is quite suspicious.
Could be, likely is, from a foreign country. It means that repackaging foreign meat can be enough to get the Made in USA designation. It's a lie. It's an absolute lie. Most people don't even know what's happening. So how can you be sure that the meat you're eating is from the United States and has been raised with the highest quality standards and is the tastiest? It's truly made here. Well, it's